Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we'll be doing something different. Today we'll be revisiting and maybe roasting some of my customs from when I started up to now. And we'll also be talking about things that I wish I should have done differently, and we'll talk about my thought process at the time. First, let's look at this Hawk Girl that I made back in June 2021. That was the year that I started customizing, so it's still pretty new. I thought I was a genius when I made this kit bash. I used the Last Night on Earth Wonder Woman for the torso and the boots, and then the rest are chopped up parts of the Batman Who Laughs. The wings are from the Wonder Woman 84 figure. And if you can believe it, I actually sculpted the head sculpt for this one. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward kit bashing. I believe the arms barely fit too, so just slight movements and it's just falling off right away. I sculpted some parts and it's just not very well done. If you can see the belt buckle there, it's not even in the center area. And there's my fingerprints. And also lots of paint chipping at the ankle ball joints too. As you can see, everything's fallen apart. Again, the belt buckle's off center. And there's lots of fingerprints in there. Oh, there's the arm. I'm surprised that the arm on this one kind of stayed in place. But yeah, if you kind of look where the wings are, it had to be glued in place. I had to use a glue gun so it's snug. Actually, I might have even used super glue for this one so it stays in place. If I were to give myself some advice, number one, I would say to invest in quality paints, kind of like Citadel, Monument Hobbies, or Vallejo, and as much as possible avoid the dollar store paints. Number two, I would say to use washes in moderation. It can definitely bring out some details, but using too much just makes it look sloppy, as you can see with the wings over here. Number three, if you're doing some mods like drilling holes, start with a smaller bit first and then gradually go bigger. It's much harder to fix a loose peg hole than making something much bigger. When kit bashing, also make sure that the parts fit properly. That's why having a good amount of fodder is very helpful when finding the right pieces. But I would say back then there weren't a lot of options for kit bashing. So you had to be very creative and resourceful with your parts. Here's some of my older customs from the first 2 years. So yeah, just wild made up what if characters like these Dr. Fate, Batman, and Superman. Because back then there were very limited fodder and you had to reuse everything that you have. And I didn't have a 3D printer back then too. There are definitely a ton of pros for having a 3D printer. But I think one of the biggest cons for a customizer is that it takes away your creativity and imagination. You're not forced to be resourceful with what you have, since you can just print them all. And on that note, for me, it made me not focus on improving my sculpting skills at all. So with that said, I am saving some money now, since I can just print a specific part instead of buying a whole figure just for parts. And then I think the biggest thing for me is the time that I'm saving by not sculpting and waiting for it to fully cure. I can just print it while I'm at work and then I can start painting on my days off. So it just really depends on your preference and the amount of free time that you have. As you can see, the first years were rough. I was very lazy paint jobs. I didn't even take apart my figures back then. No joint prep whatsoever as well. I believe I was using Mod Podge to seal it, and I think it's probably one of the best sealers if you're not a fan of aerosol ones like Mr. Super. It's just not very clean, since there will be brush marks, but then if you're fine with that, then it works really well. I would not recommend the Mod Podge in a can though. Mine just ended up being very tacky after a while. Alright, up next is this KG Beast from April of 2022. It's a modified Arkham Knight's Red Hood, and then after painting it after 3 years, this custom still has like very tacky and wet paint, especially into the brief areas there. I believe I used the Citadel cans and kind of like hardware store sealers for this one, And I think that's the reason why it just never fully cured. It's still tacky. And again, no prep work as you can see, but I have started to use painter's tape so the chest design wasn't so bad. Things that I do differently for this one is that I would have taken apart the figure and at least do some prep work before painting it. And then the second one is to let the paint fully dry before applying any clear coats, let it dry overnight, and then putting it together. Ugh. As you can see, the paint is still quite tacky and wet. And I believe for this one I just used the Citadel aerosol sprays and then never applied anything on top of it. And I just coated it right away. So I think that's why it's still like that. Alright, so up next is this Arthur Fleck Joker figure that I made back in March of 2022. Again, as you can see, no prep work. I didn't even take down or take apart the figure. As you can see in the groin or through the thigh pieces there, it's not painted at all. So yeah, I did use the Mortal Kombat Joker for this one. And then for the head sculpt was from the OG Action Figure Customs. And yeah, he was one of the very first ones in selling head sculpts back then. It was a pleasure to work with him. Anyways, wish I painted a white or gray base coat first before the orange, because as you can see here I did not do that, so you can see the purplish kind of hue underneath. Yeah, so tip, if you're wanting to make something more vibrant, then you'd have to paint a white or kind of like a light gray base coat first, just so it pops more. Okay, so up next is this Wolverine from 2023. So yeah, so you can see paint job wise it looks a little cleaner than the previous ones. I also started using some metallic paints here from Turbo Dork, so it was pretty good. But my biggest mistake is that I was still using hardware store sealers for these then. So it was still a little thick and it kind of rubs a little bit more. But if you can see, the gloss is a little better than the Mr. Super. And I guess another problem that I still was doing during this time is that I was using quite a bit of washes to areas that I shouldn't be putting them on. So as you can see, the inner thigh and then the back area is just full of washes. So I think it would have been much better if I didn't do any of that. Yeah, as you can see, just terrible at the back there. I even left the cape hole open. I didn't even bother filling it up. But yeah, so that's that. And then if you're doing metallics again, just follow the instructions, but mostly some of them would want a gloss black first before applying the metallics, just so you'd see it much better. Looking at it now, the head is pretty big, so it's pretty ugly. Next is Mr. Freeze. This was also from 2023. I think this was one of the better customs from that year. And I think at one point I had some LEDs on the head, but I didn't really plan out how I would do the wiring and the batteries, so I just got rid of it. The joints didn't really need much prep work since the base is already black, so I could get away with it. But here are the things that I wish I should have done differently. First one, I should have used flexible resin for the armor. It just wasn't sitting right on the body, so it looks off when looking at it from the side. Second one, the ice and frost effect on the armor could have been done better. I decided to do it from memory, but you should definitely watch videos online on how to properly do it. Third one, the neck of the manta was quite wide, and I should have modified that or the head. Otherwise, nothing Sticky Tack can fix. Number 4, I was still using hardware store sealers on this one. So there's some areas that are a little tacky, but yeah, I should have used something else. Yeah, it's a pretty cool character, so I'm probably gonna redo this one in the future. Up next is my Cyclops from March of 2024. This one started my X-Men collection, so it's very memorable to me. During this time, I started changing my style and challenging myself more by doing extra work, like doing muscle shading and cleaning up the paintwork more. Main thing that I wish I should have done differently is I should have used a flexible resin for the bandolier and kind of like the belt area there, but I was just kind of getting into the flexible resin, so I didn't do it here then. And then yeah, so if you kind of look with the figure later on, it's so that it's not sitting properly in the body, that's why. And then another thing is that looks like I've toned down on using washes on the figure, so it's just on the pockets there. Maybe I should have used much less here as well. I added the thigh straps later on when I started using flexible resin. I should have cleaned up the supports better, but compared to regular resin, this is much harder to sand and smooth out. Up next is Saber-tooth. I made this one in May 2024. This is also when I started using statue pieces for action figures, which I think is a great way to improve your figures. The hands and the head sculpt are all from a 3D Wicked Art statue, and then I learned how to modify pieces and convert them into usable parts using a 3D software like Nomad. I've also used washes more appropriately to the fur and nails, which shows all the details now. I think one of the biggest challenges when gluing a part into a painted body is that sometimes the paint can start peeling off. I think a solution for this is gluing the part first before doing any painting. A little bit more work, but I think it will work better. This is also when I started prepping my figures more, but obviously it was not enough. There's still some rubbing on the edges of the knee joints, and then the shoulder rings are also quite tight. I should have prepped it more like this Conquest figure over here. They have the same body, and as you can see, there's way more movement and almost no paint rubbing when moved gently. But yeah, could have been better with better joint prep, but overall I was heading into the right direction. Up next is the Spider-Man that I made in July of 2024. So for this one, I made much more effort to do joint prep, as I imagined I will be posing it more in ridiculous poses. So the hands and feet have no paint rub, and the arms are moving around as well, even with the shoulder rings in place. I wish I added more app crunch to this one, but yeah, maybe when I redo it again, I'll probably do a better job. So the biggest issue with this custom is that I've cut off and thinned excess rubber from the diaper piece, but it made it so thin and stretchy that the paint started to crack since it does not stretch with the rubbery part. Yeah, I've heard that some automotive leather paints can stretch. I just have not tried it personally, and I'm assuming there's probably not a lot of colors that I could use anyways. So I'm still researching and looking about what I could do for that one. But probably the better way of doing this one is to just go with a figure that's already the same color as the custom that you're about to make, so you don't have to worry about paint stretching and cracking. I also wish that my line work was better with this one. As you can see, it's very thick. But when compared to the Miles Morales figure that I made a couple months later, I think I did a much better job with doing the web line for that one. But yeah, trick is to use really fine paint brushes for it. Alright, so I'll stop there for now, since the video is getting too long. I'll do more later on. But yeah, the biggest tip that I can give you is to keep practicing. The first couple of customs are definitely going to look very rough. And by trial and error, you'll learn your own style, techniques, and what you're comfortable with. And if you have any questions, then feel free to ask around. Also try and give constructive criticisms and not just shame someone else's customs if you can. I see that a lot on the Facebook and Reddit groups. Shame on you! I also am still learning, so my work is not perfect, so the tips might be useful for you, or maybe not. And yeah, if you have some tips to share, then feel free to post them below. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.